Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world right now. You already know who it is. It is CIZZY Live Action. Um, we're gonna do something a little different today. A few months ago, I put together a document or a slideshow about some things that I find really important that a lot of people in our community and a lot of people at our age, for me, I'm a 24-year-old male. So a lot of young men, a lot of young women, and especially a lot of young Black men and women are not talking about these things that I think are very important to understand, to conceptualize, and then to put into action. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through this slide, and I'm just going to talk through each slide. We're going to talk about some of the definitions that are in there, some of the words, some of the concepts, thought processes behind some of the things that I'll share throughout this slide. And of course, just share my own opinions and my own passionate statements or whatever. Um, this should be about a 15 to 20-minute video, maybe shorter depending on how fast I talk. But if you are interested in continuing to tune in and stay right with us because we are moving right onto the slide. If you just give me a few seconds, I'll be sharing my screen and boom, bow, bow. Okay, so you guys should still be able to hear me right now. And today we're going to talk about ownership, group economics, and leveraging power structures, right? So the introduction here says ownership. So to define ownership, ownership is the act, the state, or the right of possessing something. We're going to talk about group economics, which is defined as a group that agrees to actively and consciously pursue economic interests together to create a sustainable and secure economy for themselves. Now, especially during the year of the pandemic, and especially in minority communities, I'm sure lots of us heard about or heard of the phrase group economics. We saw it on the back of some NBA jerseys. We also saw ownership and topics and conversations around ownership, not just in the music industry where there's artists like Russ, there's businesses and companies like United Masters who are constantly talking about owning your masters and the importance of ownership over your masters or over your songs. We've heard people talk about, home ownership and the advantage of home ownership. We've heard people talk about group economics and how we need to self-support and not rely on, the power structures at hand. And mentioning that power structures being defined as the hierarchy that encompasses the most powerful people in an organization. So the United States of America, especially the United States government, but the United States of America and how it runs is it's an organization. Um, and inside of that organization, the most powerful people tend to be white people. They are the hierarchy. They are who encompasses the most power in this country. This country, you can refer to it as an organization, business, whatever you want to refer to it as. But overall, we know who is in control of the power structures in the United States of America. It doesn't take a blind person to see. It's just a fact, no fiction. So these are some of the things we're going to talk about today. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the next slideshow. Let's see. All right. So number two. So slide two, we're going to dive into each of those topics. We're going to dive into ownership. We're going to dive into group economics. We're going to dive into power structures. So by the end of this section, you should understand the importance of overall ownership. We're going to give a few examples of ownership, which we'll do right now. So if you look at the bolded what is ownership? Ownership can be home ownership, which is ownership over a household. You have full control over that household. You own the property. You decide what happens on the property. You decide when or if it sells. And when or if it sells, you get the money from that. So you have home ownership. There's private business ownership. For example, for me, I have the Voices of Value LLC, which is a t-shirt company that I started. VOV is something that I have private business ownership over. So if I sell the business, I get all the money from that business. If I sell half the business, I get half of that money. If I give up half of ownership to somebody else, then I'm only going to get half the money. But as of right now, I have full ownership over this business. Okay. So when you have full private business ownership, you decide when and if it sells. You decide how it runs, if there's anything you add into it, if the business change, if you change the business uh, uh, style, if you change the marketing, if you change the branding. You have full control over the creative or the decisions behind this business. Owning your masters. This is something we've been hearing a lot about, especially if we have a lot of, if you guys out there have a lot of artist friends. I know that a lot of the people that I follow here on Instagram and that I've had on the podcast and that I interact with on a daily basis are recording artists or producers or music managers. So a lot of you guys have been hearing artists such as Russ, Jay-Z, Nipsey Hussle, and companies like United Masters talking about the importance of owning your masters. So your masters is, so if we'll talk about that here in a second, because we'll talk about that here down below. But also intellectual property is something you have ownership over. IP is simply just an idea that you came up with in your head, or something that you created on your own. As it says, intellectual property, intellectual being internal in your brain, something you created that you own. It's a part of you, like it's your intellectual property. Owning your own platform. So there's, although I don't think he owns 100% of it anymore, but at the beginning there's, Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook. There's who else? There's so many people. There's so many apps, but there's owners of social websites like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. Obviously, Facebook owns all three of those right now, but there's TikTok. There's Clubhouse. There's Snapchat. So most of these people don't have full ownership over their social over the platform, because obviously they have investors who invest in it, and people who come in who they have to give up ownership to. But overall, owning your own platform, website, having your own website, having your own app, or having your own social media platform. There's real estate ownership through equity. Now this may not be complete ownership, but it can be. You can have 100% equity, or you can have 50% equity. So diving back to home ownership, if you put a down payment on a house, you technically don't own that house in full. You don't have complete ownership over that home, and the bank can technically take it back if you default on your payments. Now, if you have $20,000 in on a $100,000 home, you have 20% of, is that 20%? Either way, you have 20% ownership in that property. Now, when you have $50,000 paid down on the house of $100,000 house, you now have 50% ownership. Once you pay the house off in full, 100%, now you have 100% equity and ownership over that real estate property. Now, the good thing about real estate is it also has the potential to appreciate. So you may pay off, the $100,000 loan, but by the time you're finished with that 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, that house might have appreciated by 10 to 20 to $30,000, depending on the market and where you live, right? So not only do you have full 100% equity in it, but it also grew. So you made money off the property by just owning it and not doing anything with it. Equity investments in the stock market. So buying stocks, you're buying ownership in companies. So if you own, 0.5% of Apple, that is 0.5% of ownership of Apple. If you own 10% of Apple, you have ownership in Apple. You may not have complete ownership where you have complete control over, the business, but you do have ownership in that company. Okay, so why should we even care about ownership? You can, so here are a few things. Like I mentioned before, with the private business ownership, you can either sell your business, you can sell your home, you can sell intellectual property for a profit, or you can leverage the equity in your home or your business to pay for other expenses or to reinvest. So when we go back to real estate, my father has full ownership over his house. We paid it off a few years ago. Let's say my dad's house goes for $80,000. He has 100% equity in the property. One thing that he can do is he can go to the bank and he can get what's called a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. So because he has equity in the home, they take out a line of credit on a specific percentage of the equity he owns, and he can take that money and use it to start up a business. He can use it to put a down payment on another property. He can use it for quite a lot of different things, right? Obviously that's called HELOC, home equity line of credit. So I'm pretty sure you can only use that on, buying or making a purchase towards or fixing up a home, right? So that's one reason why you want to have ownership or equity in a business or in a home, because you can take out some of that equity, or you can cash in on that equity and use it to pay other expenses or to reinvest in further investment properties, or other investments such as life insurance, or some investing in the stock market, or investing in your in your wow, blank, but anyways, like a college fund, whatever it might be. And when we talk about owning your masters, when you own your masters or your intellectual property, you are the complete and full 100% holder of the master and the IP. And being that you have full control over your masters, you have control over the financial gains from the recordings that you do, whether it's a production, whether it's an instrumental, whether it's just a quick voiceover. Something we're seeing on TikTok a lot is people just making some funny, you know, sounds that everyone uses. Now, if you have ownership, like you have complete ownership over that sound or that intellectual property, and you trademark that sound, or you go down another lane of means of gaining ownership over that specific intellectual property, whether it's a sound you made like wow wow, or something funny you say, or maybe it's simply just a music recording. When you have full control over that sound, or that IP, or that master recording, you get full 100% of the financial gains from that. Or you can also use it to leverage a bigger bag. And now what I mean by that, and why I added that in there, is because at the time of me, putting this document together, Russ had just uh, joined a partnership with a specific record label, and I can't particularly remember, but he partnered with a specific record label, and a lot of people were coming at him because he's known for talking about own your masters, fuck these recording studios, don't sign deals, like do it yourself, whatever. He was always talking that shit, talking that good stuff, and so people were mad at him. But what he did is he released so much music, and so much of his music was getting a lot of play, that he leveraged that he had ownership over the masters of all this music to secure a even bigger bag by handing over or allowing a specific amount of time for a record label to get a percentage, or I don't remember the whole deal, but get a percentage of the masters. And when you are blowing up like Russ was, and you have such a large catalog like Russ does, and all the songs are doing well and consistently getting paid, and Russ is getting all that money from, because he owns the masters. If he partners with a recording, a record label, and that record label pushes his brand a little bit more, and he gives them a percentage, or equity in, quote unquote, his master, or ownership over some of his masters. Now, instead of him getting full benefit of the financial gains, now that recording, or that record label, gets some of the financial gains. So he owned his masters over a large catalog that was pulling in a lot of bread and had a lot of clout, and he leveraged that to secure a bigger bag from the recording, from the record label. So you can also or if you understand how to do certain things, you have certain intellectual property, you have certain skills with coding, or you have certain skills with AI, or artificial, or AR, or whatever those things are called. I'm still learning about it. But if you have a certain intellectual property that someone else doesn't have, and they want to utilize you and your value and your intellectual property, you can now request or demand a bigger bag, because you're the only person who's capable of doing what this certain company needs, right? So ownership over your own intellectual property, ownership over your masters, can be used to leverage, to secure a bigger bag, or to just benefit from the financial gains you're already getting from it. And when we talk about owning your own platform, like an app or a social media account or a website, think about it. Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, I have, a lot of people who are constantly complaining on Twitter and Facebook about how Facebook took their post down, or won't allow them to speak their mind about a certain topic, or Twitter banned them because they posted a certain photo that Twitter found, inappropriate for Twitter, but may have been powerful or important to somebody else. Or on TikTok, posting something that's important to you or your brand or how you live your life, but they censor it because they think it's not allowed and that it goes against quote unquote community standards. So now you can't, people can't view your content. And now imagine you're an IG model and IG decides to just mute your page because it doesn't like what you're posting or like how you're posting or how much attention you're getting. You don't have control over that platform. They do. So they can cancel your business, money. They can delete your account just like that at a snap of a finger. They can dictate your conversations. They can decide who is going to see your stuff. They have full ownership and control over your creative once you post it. But when you own your own platform, you can dictate conversations that serve your community. You can have direct access to your consumers or to your community without being flagged or censored by these big brother social media accounts like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, right? So these are just some of the reasons why ownership in general is just important, and some of the ways that you can have ownership. It doesn't have to be through real estate, doesn't have to be through a business, doesn't have to be through your music. It can be through a platform. It can be through equity in real estate, in the stock market. It can be through a lot of different means, just whatever works for you and whatever lane you decide to go down. But these are some reasons why ownership is important and some ways you can gain ownership in your life, right? So we're going to dive deeper into home ownership. So let's talk more about equity in the property. So equity in the property simply means the difference between the market value of your home and the amount you owe the lender who holds the mortgage. So if Bank of America lends you $150,000 and you put down a $50,000 down payment, you still owe the lender $100,000. And if the house is worth $150,000, you only have, whatever percentage that if you pay 50,000 on a $150,000 house, whatever percentage that is of equity, that's what you have. But if that home appreciates, your equity also grows. And once you pay the house off in full, the difference between the market value of your home and how much you own the lender, if you don't owe the lender anything, it's just how much is your home worth. That's how much equity you have in the property. Let's talk about home value. So if your house is $350,000 and you owe $250,000 on the mortgage, you have $100,000 in equity. You can increase equity or ownership in the property by paying down the mortgage and then increasing market value of the home through renovations, mostly through renovations, right? So, and obviously how the housing market's doing and obviously where you bought your house. So that's what I was trying to explain just in a more clear way. So, equity in the property, to give a simple example, and I'm gonna run through it again, is if your house is worth $350,000, you owe the bank or you owe the lender $250,000. That means you have $100,000 in equity. You can increase equity by paying down your mortgage or paying down how much you owe the bank, the private lender, or whatever it is, and then by increasing market value in your home through renovations, right? So when we talk about full ownership in a home, you've paid off the mortgage in full, so you don't owe the lender, you don't owe the bank, you don't owe anything on a loan. And if you sell the house at market value, you pocket the money minus the selling cost of the home. So obviously you have to pay a percentage to the real estate agent. You might, do some seller financing for the person who's buying. You might, agree to fix the roof or something like that. So you might have some expenses when you sell the house, but if you have full ownership over the house, you've paid off the mortgage in full, then you pocket the money, of whatever you sell it at, right? Or instead, if you're really into generational wealth, which like a lot of people are and are becoming interested in, especially people in our community, you can pass down the home as generational wealth. All generational wealth means is that somebody before you created a means by making money that is either passive or active. It can be a business that you have to work in, or it can be passive real estate income where, the house is just making money on its own, or the apartment building or the complex, and you hired a property manager and you don't have to do anything on it. It can be passive or active wealth that's passed down to a child, to a grandson, to a uncle, or to a nephew, whatever it is. And now that person can utilize that asset to continue to make money. And they have the choice to sell that business or sell that home or continue to pass it down in their family. We know the Trump family. We know the family behind Walmart. We know the family behind a lot of these old businesses who continue to pass the business down and other assets down to their children, so that their children can continue to, make money through the business that was created by someone before them, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So let's talk about business ownership. So equity in a company. So as a co-founder, or being a part of a startup, you may be offered a percentage of equity in the company or in future stocks, but not sole ownership. So, to give a direct example, I have a business partner in my t-shirt business. Once the business begins to grow, we plan on, creating a contract where I give him, as a co-founder, um, you know, equity in the company. Um, and when you get equity in the company, you might be given equity through future stocks of, we don't plan on doing this, but say we grew into such a massive business that we decided to IPO. If we IPO, I can either give my co-founder or my employees equity in the company through future stocks, or I can just give equity in the entire company and, all of its financial gains, and give 10% equity. If we sell it, or of whatever money we pull out, you can have equity in the company. There's sole proprietorship, which is a business is owned and run by one person, and there's no legal distinction between the owner and the business. So control over profits, expenses, and selling is all by the sole owner. So like me with the podcast, the Culture Talks podcast, or technically right now still with the VLV t-shirts, but we do plan on changing that up because the co-founder because we have a co-founder, and I plan on giving him equity in the company. Partnerships. Partnerships are a legal form of business operation between two or more individuals who share management and profits. Equity in business is consulted on and hopefully distributed equally. No one has full control. So that's what we plan on doing, creating a partnership, and transitioning from a sole proprietorship to a partnership. The computer is about to die, so you might just get this and get a part 2 later. But matter of fact, we're gonna do that. So if you guys just give me a second, we'll see if I can plug the computer in before it dies. If I can't, then all you guys will get is this part for now, and we'll follow up a little bit later. But we'll see how quick I am. So be a little patient with me if you're watching this far into this piece of content on Instagram. I think we got this plugged in and good. So we're going to continue. So moving to I think this is the last thing that we were talking about in regards to ownership, owning your own platform. So the pros of owning your own platform is it gives you the ability to set your own structure and rules, not being limited by someone else's platform. Mark Zuckerberg ain't in charge of you. Jack Dorsey's not in charge of you. You're in charge of your platform because you created your platform and you created your own structure and rules. And you own the behavioral data of your community. So that means what they're doing. You own the data and the behaviors they are taking, or the actions they're taking on your platform. You own that data, and you can utilize and leverage that data to directly access your consumers, or to pitch certain things to them, or to cater your marketing, or cater your products towards their behaviors. And no one else has control over that but you. So you get direct access to your consumers. If you own a business, or if you you have a large personal brand, whatever it might be. The cons are that your customers or potential customers are already spending all their time on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, which we all know, and we are all doing ourselves. Another business, I'm helping start. The founder, I'm, coming in as a partner. The founder is creating an app for the platform. He is creating an app for the platform, but if we just used one of the apps that are already popular, the benefit is that the customers or potential customers are already spending all their time on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and Amazon's app and Snapchat. So you still need to use these outlets to build, an audience, and to draw attention, and to build a community. But the end goal should always be to create your own platform, and then transfer, your audience and your community to your platform for your content conversions, right? But why? So the community on social media that you've built doesn't really belong to you, like I've been stating over and over again in the past few minutes. Your community belongs to Facebook, it belongs to Instagram, it belongs to Snapchat, it belongs to any other platforms that you're using and leveraging to build your brand, build your company, build attention around what you're doing. Now, with your own platform, you are able to control your community and you're able to allow them and enable them to see content that's relevant to them instead of the Instagram algorithm deciding that, right? So, owning your platform has its pros and has its cons, but the best thing to do is to leverage both. So, hopefully that makes sense to you. Um, let's move on to the next topic. So I told you we were going to talk about ownership, power structures, and group economics. We've just finished the section on ownership. We're moving into the section on group economics. So group economics simply means you're buying products and services from your people before you leave the community to seek it elsewhere. So as we know, all over America and all over the world, communities congregate with people who look like and have similar cultural tendencies as them. So Black people live around Black people, Latinos tend to live around Latinos, Asians tend to live around Asians, Jamaicans tend to live around more Jamaicans, whatever it is, right? So the goal of group economics is to keep the money circulating within your community first before it leaves the community, right? So if you are in your community and you want to get a haircut, you can take the money that you just made and you can leave your community and invest your money and spend your money in another community that doesn't come back to benefit your community, or you can spend money and invest in the people inside of your community and keep that money circulating in your community, because those are the people who really care about your community and want your community to grow. So that money circulating in your community and most likely will go back to reinvesting in the communities, through businesses, through community activities, through community building programs. But if the money you received is constantly leaving the community, it makes it difficult for the community to do these things because everyone's taking money out of the community. I know I just said community 7,000 times, but deal with it. So what are some examples of products and services that people might create that you can support and buy? There's products like eyeliner, clothing, barbecue sauce, pancake mix. I put ganja, and drinks, right? So eyeliner. We have people here in Kansas City. I think it's Pink Lip Cosmetics that you could buy eyeliner and other makeup from. Clothing. We have Swan. We have Fuck You Swan clothing. We have my clothing line, Voices of Value. We have what else do we have? We have Signature by Lee. We have Kai Colors, Wasteland Clothing. We have so many different. We have Trapedix, and other material over at Threads 816. We have the Papa store out here that has a lot of Kansas City inspired merchandise. So there's so many places, and then there's obviously people like um, you know Nahum. There's people like Lawoo's. There's a lot of people from around here that also make designer type clothing or luxury type clothing, handmade, right? So there's a lot of people we can support with clothing. Barbecue sauce. We are the land of barbecue here in Kansas City, as everyone knows, and there are local barbecue sauces that you can support. Pancake mixes. We just saw one of our Black legends in the Black community, Master P, come out with a whole bunch of different food products that he's selling, and one of them being pancake mix. So you can buy from them, keep that money in the community, because we know Master P is trying to invest back in the Black community, invest back into Black education through HBCUs. It's a way to keep money circulating within our community, because we know that money is going to come back to serve us and the people around us and the generations to come. Now, services, plumbers, car mechanics, personal trainers, locksmiths, contractors. My boy Dre, he's a skilled HVAC guy. We have people who, I got my guy Earl Moore, who's a skilled plumber. We have car mechanics who are skilled car mechanics. We have personal trainers like myself, personal trainers like DC Fitness, Dion Cummings. We have personal trainers like Zoe, Alfonso Hodges. We got personal trainers like D Moore. We have personal trainers, we have locksmiths, we have contractors. These are people who provide services to the community, and you can invest back in them. That's also considered group economics, and supporting and helping the money continue to circulate in your community instead of leaving the community to go to these, large corporation companies or large plumbing companies or large car mechanic companies that are not reinvesting back in our community. And, to be frank, a lot of these companies don't give a shit about our community. So, another way group economics can be, gone about is through investment clubs. You can get a group of family members, of friends, of coworkers, and you guys can, create a thesis around investments and create a common goal and pool a regularly invested dollar amount into a common bank account for the purpose of investing back in your community, or investing, into a business or into the stock market, or into, raising funds to build a, grocery store in a food desert, or raising funds to, improve a local high school's sports programs or choir programs or artistic programs or whatever it might be. These are all different ways that you can practice group economics and reinvest your money back into the community so it can serve the generations and people that are most likely underserved. Let's talk about power structures. So, Black business ownership in 2019 was at 19 million businesses, or 70.9% of all US businesses. Oh, pause, rewind. So, in 2019, 19 million businesses, and upwards of 71% of all US businesses were white owned. Blacks only owned about 2.6 million businesses, or 9.5% of all US businesses, and Latinos own 3.3 million businesses, or 12.2% of all American US businesses. So Black representation in Black business ownership, as you can see, is super low. It's an underserved area. It's a overlooked thing that's actually really important. Black economic representation. The 19 million white-owned businesses have 88% of overall sales and control over 86% of U.S. employment, while Black businesses have only 1.3% of total American sales. 1.3% of total American sales, and only hold 1.7% of the nation's employees. As you can see, super low, super low. Latino businesses have 4% of US sales and 4.2% of US employment, which is also low, but no shade to Latinos, but seeing that, Black Americans brought here on slave ships, some of the, obviously American Indians founded this area. Europeans came over, colonized, then came with slaves to build this country. Considering that this country was built on the backs of Black and brown people, for us to only own 1.3%, have 1.3% of total American sales through our Black businesses, being that we're, I believe 13% of the population of America, is sad. And, being that, shout out to all the Latinos and keep working hard, but being that these people are, this community is moving into America and own way more businesses and are, cover US sales over 3% more US sales and over 3% more of US employment, is crazy. So Black economic representation is super low and definitely needs to be pumped. Black business ownership is super low and definitely needs to be pumped. And that's why I'm making this video, to talk about this thing so we're aware of it and so we can be inspired to take action, start businesses, start side hustles, start, providing services, start understanding why it's important to circulate money in the Black community and why it's important for Black business ownership to be a thing and to have more representation from the Black economy, and then to talk about Black home ownership. Positive thing is, I'm pretty sure that has increased over time, but among Black families, 44% owned their home as of the first quarter of this year, compared to 73.7% of white families. So the goal is obviously to increase home ownership, but I do know that that number has increased. So the reason I mention this is, if 88% of overall sales and 86% of overall U.S. employment is, from white-owned businesses, and the Black economic representation is super low, we know that we don't have too much power in, the wider community. We only have power in our communities. And once we build our communities up and we circulate and build more, a strong Black economy that starts to pull in people who want to come invest, oh, you have, let's say all of Kansas City's warehouses is owned by Black people, and we're buying up a lot of property. Now they have to come to us. Now they have to invest in us. Now they have to bring their money to our communities. And that's the goal, because once money starts to come in, then power structures start to shift. And once money and power structures start to shift, then we start to see communities grow and develop and thrive. Conclusion: poverty, crime, and poor education in minority communities can be improved by the support of current and creation of more community-owned businesses. The more money that's circulating in the communities, the more attention that these communities get, and the more businesses want to come in, and the more investors want to come in, and the more money, the more businesses, then school systems improve. And then and we'll dive into that at a later date, but I'm just telling you what happens. School systems improve, and schools improve, and teachers come in, and more people are attracted to the area, and employment, starts to rise, and more diverse, and more educated people start to want to come back to the community. See, one of the problems is, especially amongst minority communities, is when we're trying to get out of the poverty, crime-ridden, poorly educated areas growing up, and we do make it out, and we do make it to college, or we do build a business that's successful, or we do make it out of that situation, oftentimes we go and buy homes in other communities that aren't communities that we came from, are not minority communities. We go spend money with people who already run America, and then we spend money in those communities and continue to keep our money away from our community who needs it most. Now, if we can improve, bring more businesses, bring more attractive schools and businesses for and recent graduates or people who are looking to be employed, if we can bring those things to our community, then those people come back to the community. They work in the community. They buy homes in the community. They reinvest in the community, and they try to grow the community. If we can build that up, and if we can make that happen, then now the school systems improve. Now the parks get better. Now more green spaces come about. Now our overall health gets better. Now there's less food deserts, and more grocery stores come to the area, and more healthy foods from these more top chain grocery stores come to the area. Now people can eat better. Now people can afford more. Now people have access to more, and our communities can improve. Black and brown people give up their power and influence every time we step out of our community and spend money with people who have no vested interest in our community. And that's the whole point I'm trying to make. Capital plus ownership equals power. If we increase capital and ownership in Black and other minority communities, we can shift the power structures that are currently at hand and create some dope shit in the areas we come from. Thank you for coming into my TED Talk, so to say. If you watch this full video, please leave a comment below on your thoughts, your opinions, negative, positive. We welcome them all. And share this with a friend, because I think that whether I explained it well or not, I think this slide provides a lot of valuable information for people to know. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I know I said it was going to be a 10 to 15 minute talk and turned into about an hour, but thank you for tapping in. CIZZY out of here. Much love.